I knew something was wrong before I ever saw the video, and the part that still bothers me most is how small the first clue was. It wasn't a text message. It wasn't a lipstick stain, a motel receipt, or some dramatic scene out of a bad TV show. It was a dried boot mark in my entryway, sitting exactly where my boots usually went, except it wasn't mine. I work on a commercial fishing vessel out of Louisiana. I'm gone a lot. Sometimes 12 days, sometimes close to 3 weeks, depending on weather, fuel, and whether the captain thinks one more run is worth everybody coming back dead tired and smelling like diesel. It's hard money. Honest money. The kind that wrecks your sleep, your back, and a marriage if both people aren't holding the same rope. My wife Jenna always said she understood that. She said the job was hard, but I came home the same man every time. Quiet. Reliable. Not a drinker, not a cheater, not a guy who disappeared his paycheck trying to feel important. I believed her because I'd built my life around the idea that being solid mattered more than being flashy. We'd been married 6 years. No kids. Small house outside town that used to belong to my dad. After he passed, I fixed it up a little at a time with my own hands. New subfloor in the kitchen. Repaired porch rail after a storm. Patched drywall. Rebuilt the shed doors when the hinges rusted out. It wasn't some dream home from a magazine, but it was mine before it was ours, and every part of it had sweat in it. My friend Nate had known me almost as long as Jenna had. We weren't blood, but close enough that people talked like we were. He helped me re-roof part of the house after a hurricane tore at it. I helped him rebuild the transmission on his truck. When I was offshore and weather turned ugly, he was one of the few people I trusted to check my place if Jenna needed help. He had a key for emergencies. He knew the shed code. At the time, that felt like trust. Later, it felt like I had personally handed him the map. The trip before everything broke was 14 days. Rough on the back half. Bad chop, bad sleep, everybody short with each other by the time we tied up. By the time I got home, all I wanted was to set my bag down, shower until the salt came off, and sleep one full night without hearing an engine through the walls. I got in around 4. Duffel over one shoulder, deck boots still dirty from dock grime and dried salt. I stepped into the entryway, set the bag against the wall, bent down to take my boots off, and saw the mark already on the floor. It was faint, partly dried, but wrong. Narrower than my boot. Heel angle different. A little break in the tread line near the toe. I stared at it too long. My routine at home is as fixed as anything on the boat. I always set my boots under the same shelf by the coat hooks. Same angle, same spot, every trip. Jenna used to joke that I lived by patterns like an old dog. She wasn't wrong. When you spend enough time offshore, routine stops being a personality quirk and becomes a way of keeping your head straight. That mark was close enough to mine to pass if you weren't paying attention. I was paying attention. Jenna came around from the kitchen smiling a little too fast. "You're home early." I had texted her from the dock. I wasn't early. She knew exactly when I was coming. "Boat got in on time," I said. She hugged me. She felt warm, but not relaxed. Her arms were around me, but her shoulders were tight. It wasn't movie guilt. It was more like her body had already braced for something and hadn't gotten the message she was supposed to act normal. She asked if I wanted food, coffee, a shower, a beer. Too many offers in too little time. I looked past her toward the sink and saw 2 mugs. Again, not proof. But Jenna hadn't had coffee after lunch in years because it kept her awake. She drank tea later in the day. I asked whether her sister had been over. She said no, then corrected herself too quickly and said the extra mug was old. From earlier, she forgot she already used one. It was a clumsy answer from somebody who usually had smoother ones. That first night I slept like a man whose brain had found a splinter and couldn't stop tonguing it. Every time I got up, something else felt just a little off. The throw blanket in the living room was folded wrong. My old tackle backpack had been moved from the top shelf in the closet to the middle one. In the guest bathroom, there was a bottle of men's body wash that wasn't mine, the cheap kind Nate used to buy when he stayed over late after jobs years earlier. Every single thing had an explanation available. That was what made it so ugly. None of it was enough by itself, but all of it together made the house feel lightly used by someone who didn't belong there. The next morning, Jenna acted normal on purpose. That's the only way I know to describe it. Too normal. She hummed while making eggs. Asked about the crew. Asked whether the season was going to hold. Kissed my cheek and moved around the kitchen like somebody who had decided if she performed calm hard enough, the whole thing would pass. By noon, I knew two things. First, I wasn't going to accuse her with nothing solid in my hand. Second, if I didn't get solid proof fast, I was going to poison myself trying to read every little thing in my own house. So that afternoon, I told her a guy from the boat needed help with trailer lights, and I might be gone an hour or two. Instead, I drove 30 minutes out to a farm supply store where nobody knew me, bought a battery camera with motion alerts and local storage, and paid cash. Not because I thought I was in some spy movie, because if I turned out to be wrong, I didn't want the whole thing attached to my name at the local hardware place. When I got home, I didn't put the camera inside. Jenna would have noticed anything out of place indoors. Outside was easier. We had an old floodlight over the side yard near the gate people actually used, because it was closer to the driveway than the front walk. The light had flickered for months. I took it down in broad daylight, called into the house that I was finally fixing the junk light, and mounted the camera under the eave line beside it, angled at the side gate, the strip of driveway by the mailbox, and the path to the side door. From the ground, it looked like I'd replaced one piece of hardware with another. Then I waited. There is something rotten about waiting outside your own life to see whether it's going to betray you on schedule. Wednesday came and went with nothing. Thursday evening, I told Jenna the captain might send us back out for a short 2-night run. I said it like I was annoyed. She acted annoyed too, but I caught the flicker behind it. Not happiness exactly. Relief that she thought she had time. That night, I drove 20 minutes out, parked behind an equipment yard, and sat with my phone in my hand. Around 7:12 it buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the app, and there was Nate's truck pulling up just past my mailbox, not into my driveway, but on the shoulder where it would be less obvious from the road. He got out with a small cooler in one hand and came through the side gate without knocking. No pause, no looking around, no hesitation. He moved through my yard like a man walking a path his feet knew. He even stepped over the cracked piece of walkway near the azaleas where Jenna always caught her toe. That hurt worse than the rest of it at first. Not that he was there, but that he was comfortable there. A second clip hit a few minutes later. Jenna opened the side door, smiling before he even reached it. She took the cooler from him and moved aside. He went in. I sat there with the truck idling, phone in my hand, air conditioner blowing cold against my face while my whole body felt hot and hollow at the same time. You spend enough years being a grown man in the world. You imagine betrayal is going to feel like one clear emotion. Rage, maybe. Or heartbreak. It doesn't. It feels messy and humiliating and weirdly quiet, like your brain is rearranging old memories while your body is still trying to understand what it just watched. I didn't storm in. I didn't kick the door open. I didn't call either of them. I went home after 11 when Nate's truck was long gone. Jenna was in bed pretending to be asleep. I stood in the doorway and looked at her for a full minute, and the only thought I had was that a person doesn't become a stranger all at once. They become one in layers, and sometimes you don't realize the last familiar part is gone until you're already standing there in the dark. The next day gave me the second piece I needed. Another clip showed Nate coming by again while I was supposed to be gone. This time, before he went inside, he cut toward my shed and punched in the code on the lock. My code. The one I'd trusted him with years earlier when it actually meant something. He stepped inside, came back out with my folding camp chairs and my small tackle cooler, and later that night, another clip showed him leaving in my gray hoodie with the old bait shop logo on the chest. That's the detail that got under my skin deepest. Not because the hoodie mattered, because he was using my things to make himself comfortable inside my own life. At that point, the affair itself wasn't even the whole story anymore. They had built a routine around me being gone. My work schedule wasn't just an inconvenience to them, it was cover. I saved the clips in 3 places, then sat in the shed for nearly an hour trying to decide what kind of man I was going to be next. I wasn't going to confront Jenna first. She would cry, deny, tell the story sideways, and try to get me lost in details before I had room to think. I wasn't going to confront Nate at my house either. Too much chance of it turning physical, and I didn't want that on my property or in front of her. So I did the thing that made the most sense to me. I invited him fishing. Friday morning, before daylight, we met at the little marsh launch we'd used for years. He brought shrimp and coffee. I already had the John boat in the water. He slapped my shoulder, grinned, asked whether I was finally taking a morning off from playing responsible husband and deckhand. I almost laughed at the word husband. We pushed off in the dark and ran out into a quiet stretch where the reeds broke the wind. Sunrise started smearing pink through the clouds. On any other day, I would have thought it was a good morning. We fished a while before I said anything. Part of me wanted him comfortable. Part of me wanted to be absolutely sure I could keep my voice steady when it started. Nate talked the whole first hour. Fuel prices, a guy we knew getting divorced, whether his truck was going to make it another winter. He looked easy, normal, almost cheerful. That did more damage than I expected. A liar standing nervous at least looks like he understands the size of what he's done. Nate looked like a man who thought he could still share coffee and a boat with me and make it home. Eventually, I killed the motor and let us drift. He reeled in and looked over. "We moving?" "In a minute." He set his rod down and took a sip of coffee. "You all right?" I looked at him and said, "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" His face didn't explode into guilt. It stalled. That tiny half-second when a person realizes the room has changed and they weren't ready for it. Then he snorted like I'd said something insulting and stupid. "Man, come on. I asked you something. Don't start that. How long?" He shook his head fast, offended now. "You've been offshore too long. You get weird after those trips. Don't make stuff up." That line hit me harder than it should have, because it told me he had already built the excuse in his head. I wasn't a betrayed friend. I was a tired, paranoid man inventing problems because of work. "I'm not making anything up," I said. He leaned forward, irritated. "Then what? Somebody said something? You listening to gossip now? I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the first clip. At first he looked annoyed, then suspicious, then still. I turned the screen toward him. There he was, parking past my mailbox, walking through my gate, stepping over the cracked walkway, heading straight for my side door like he had every right in the world. He looked away before the clip ended. Don't. I opened the next one. Jenna smiling, taking the cooler, moving aside for him to come in. He stared out across the water with one hand over his mouth. Not because he was heartbroken, because he was calculating how bad it was and whether there was still room to talk. How many times? I asked. He didn't answer. How many? A few months, he muttered finally. I nodded once because if I let myself do more than that, it was going to turn into shouting. A few months? It wasn't supposed to get serious. I laughed once, hard and short. That's what you've got? He rubbed both hands over his face. It just happened. No. Rain happens. Engine trouble happens. You parked off the road, used my side gate, used my shed code, went in my house while I was offshore, and wore my clothes on the way out. That did not just happen. That landed. I could see it. Not enough to make him noble, but enough to make him ashamed for a second. Then he tried the next excuse. She said you were gone all the time. That one didn't even make me angrier. It made me cold. So that made it yours? I asked. My wife, my house, my gear, my hoodie? He closed his eyes. I was wrong. You were comfortable, I said. That's worse. He looked at the phone again. Did you show her? Not yet. What are you going to do? I'm going to take you back to the ramp. Then you're going to stay out of my life. His jaw tightened, pride trying to climb back into a man who had already blown his legs off. You're acting like I killed somebody. I looked at him and said, No. I'm acting like you crawled into the one place I trusted you with and made yourself at home. That was the last real thing I said to him. The ride back was mostly silence and practical words. Net, line, cooler, trailer. There's something ugly about having to finish normal tasks beside a man who just admitted to helping wreck your marriage. From a distance, we probably looked like two friends loading out after a quiet morning. Up close, it felt like the last few pieces of a dead friendship being folded away. At the launch, he tried once more. Look, man. I cut him off. Don't call. Don't text. Don't come by. There is nothing in your mouth that fixes what I watched. He nodded then, not because he agreed, but because he understood there was no version of this where I ever let him back in. I drove home with the clips still on my phone and a kind of awful calm I hadn't had the day before. Anger is hot at first. Proof cools it into something more useful. Jenna was in the kitchen slicing tomatoes when I walked in, like she was standing inside an ad for normal life. Sun through the window, cutting board out, house quiet. It almost made me sick. She looked up and smiled. How was fishing? I set my keys on the counter. Sit down. Her face changed right away, but she still reached for innocence first. What's wrong? Sit. She sat at the table. I sat across from her, looked at her for a second, and kept it simple. How long has Nate been coming here while I'm gone? Her eyes flashed. What? How long? He helps with stuff, you know that. I didn't ask if he helps with stuff. She crossed her arms. Why are you talking to me like this? Because I'm trying not to lose my mind in my own kitchen, I thought. Instead, I said, I talked to Nate. She froze for half a second and recovered badly. About what? About you. She stood up too fast and pointed at me. No, absolutely not. Whatever he said, he's lying. Interesting thing to say before I told her he said anything. I didn't tell you what he said, I answered. She opened her mouth, closed it, and changed direction. You've been weird since you got back. You're tired and turning things into something they're not. There it was. Same line, same frame. Make me the unstable one. Make me the problem. I stood up too, not close to her, not touching her, just done pretending. Do not do that to me, I said. Do not stand in my kitchen and try to make me crazy because you got careless. I'm not lying. I pulled out my phone and hit play. I didn't explain it. I didn't threaten. I just turned the screen around. The first clip was enough. Nate coming through the side gate. Straight path. No hesitation. All the color went out of her face. Then I played the second one. Her opening the door for him, smiling, taking the cooler. She sat back down hard. For a few seconds, she didn't say anything at all. Then the crying started. Not soft crying, not grief. The shocked, ugly kind that comes when a person realizes control of the story is gone. It wasn't supposed to. I held up my hand. Don't use his lines. She stopped. That was the first honest second she had given me all day. How long? I asked. Since spring, she whispered. I looked at the calendar on the wall without meaning to, like I could count up all the nights I was offshore while they used my house like it belonged to them. Who started it? She shook her head. Does that matter? Yes. She pressed her lips together, then said, he came by after that storm one night. We had drinks. We talked. I was lonely. People love using loneliness like it's a legal defense. I nodded once. Then you leave. You tell me it's over. You don't bring my friend into my house and use my work schedule like a reservation. Tears rolling now, voice shaking, she said what I had expected from the beginning. You're gone all the time. That still landed like a slap. I was at work, I said. I wasn't missing because I didn't care. She tried to step toward me. I stepped back. That hurt her more than yelling would have. She reached for my arm and I moved away again. Please, she said. Please don't do this right now. I stared at her. You already did it. I'm just the last one in the room. That was when the excuses started shifting every few seconds. It meant nothing. It only happened a few times. It had been over. She was going to tell me. Nate pushed it. She pushed it. She was confused. She still loved me. When people get caught with proof, truth stops being one thing. It becomes whatever shape they think might leave them a door. I let her run out of versions. Then I said, very calmly, pack a bag and leave. Her face went blank. What? You heard me. This is my home. It was my father's house before it was ours, and you are not staying here tonight. She cried harder. You can't just throw me out. I can tell you to leave tonight and stay with your sister, your mom, a hotel, Nate. I don't care. Tomorrow I'll deal with the legal side. Tonight you're not sleeping here. She looked at me for a long moment, trying to figure out whether this was still negotiable, whether she could drag me into one more exhausting loop until I softened. I didn't move. She went to the bedroom and packed. I stayed in the kitchen and listened. Drawer slides, closet door, hangers scraping, a zipper pulling shut. Normal household sounds carrying the weight of something that wasn't normal at all. When she came back through the entryway with the bag in her hand, she stopped near the floor where that dried boot mark had first caught my eye. I don't know whether she noticed it then, or whether she understood how small the mistake had been that started all of this unraveling. She looked at me and said, "Are you really ending everything over this?" That question told me more than anything else had. She still thought the problem was the discovery, not the betrayal. "Not over this," I said. "Over all of it." Then I opened the door. She stood there another second, like she expected me to call her back, ask where she'd go, tell her we'd talk tomorrow. I didn't. She walked out into the dark with her bag and her phone and whatever story she planned to tell herself after that. I shut the door, locked it, and stood there with my hand on the deadbolt until I heard her car pull away. The house went quiet in a way I had always wanted and suddenly couldn't stand. That night, Nate texted once. Jenna sent paragraphs. I didn't answer either of them. By the next afternoon, I had changed the locks, changed the shed code, blocked both numbers, and called a lawyer to start the separation process. No big revenge, no smashing things, no public performance, just clean, boring consequences. The next couple weeks were ugly in the slow way real life is ugly. Paperwork, silence, bad sleep, telling exactly 3 people enough truth that nobody could rewrite the story later and make me the problem. In a small town, people eventually hear what they hear anyway. A few admitted after the fact that they had wondered about Jenna and Nate. Not known, just wondered. I was angry for about a day. Then I let that go. Most people don't want to bring a live grenade into somebody else's marriage. What stayed with me wasn't the confrontation on the boat, or even the look on Jenna's face when she saw the video. It was that first clue on the floor. The boot mark. Because that was the moment the truth touched my life in a form small enough to miss. One wrong angle on tile. One print that didn't belong. People think trust breaks in dramatic ways. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it breaks quietly through patterns. An extra mug, a moved bag, a route through your yard somebody walks too naturally, a body that feels tense when it should feel relieved, a person reaching for you're imagining things just a little too fast. I don't walk around angry all the time now. Anger takes too much energy, and I spent enough of mine on 2 people who had already decided what my absence was worth. What I do have now is a rule. I still believe in trust. You can't build a life without it. Not with a spouse, not with a friend, not on a boat where one lazy mistake can hurt everybody aboard. But blind trust is not loyalty. It's just comfort wearing decent clothes. So this is the rule now. Trust people, but verify. Trust what they say, but pay attention to what repeats. Trust affection, but not if it only works in your absence. Trust friendship, but not when it gets too comfortable in your house. And when something in your own life feels slightly off, don't explain it away just because the bigger answer is ugly. A month after Jenna left, I rebuilt the little boot shelf by the door. Wider, cleaner, sealed against water. Practical job. Something square and honest I could finish with my hands. The camera stayed up outside too. Not because I wanted to live scared. Because I had paid enough for that lesson already. Sometimes the thing that saves you from a bigger lie is not a dramatic confession. It's one small detail that doesn't fit. For me, it was a dried boot mark in the entryway. That was enough.